channel. Today we're going to be talking about my best books of 2020. Woo! So I tried to get this list down to 10. But I've read 238 books this year. I blame the pandemic. If it weren't for COVID, I wouldn't have had as much time on my hands. And I wouldn't have been stuck inside with my husband, where my choices were...
Yeah, you're right. You got a point there.
Where my choices were hang out with my husband. Or read a book.
So you chose wisely by reading.
I love you, babe.
Love you too.
So yes, I read 238 books. So I'm going to be talking about 15 of them. My 15 favorite books of 2020. We're going to go in backwards order, so we're going to start at 15 and go to 1, you know, like all good countdown videos go. Some of these books I don't own anymore. That doesn't mean that they're not still my favorites. I'm just not much, I don't keep books very often. I like having more unread books than I do read books, and I don't love keeping books unless they're like gifted to me or I find that they are one of my all-time favorite books. Number 15 is If I Stay by Gail Forman. This was a heartbreakingly wonderful book. So you follow Mia, who has the perfect life, if it exists. And then one day, her family and her go on a car ride somewhere. And they have this devastating car accident where Mia ends up in a coma. But you follow from Mia's perspective, and you can hear and see everything that is going on in the room when she's in her coma. And she can hear everything that her grandparents say to her, everything that her boyfriend says to her. You can see it. Then you get flashbacks of her life in general, about her family, about how her and Teddy, her boyfriend, you know, met and everything. And it just had a perfect balance of heartbreak and tenderness, and I highly, highly recommend this. It says, what would you do if you had to choose? So basically, you follow Mia as she has to choose between fighting for her life and staying in this world, or moving on to the next. Does she wake up from her coma, or does she not? Okay, and then number 14, I read pretty early on in this year, I think back in February, and it still haunts me today. By the time you read this, I'll Be Dead by Julie Ann Peters. So you follow this girl named Delaney who has tried to commit suicide several times. And she's determined to make her suicide stick. So she joins this website called throughthelight.com, where they basically tell you They help you plan it with how you're going to do it, what time, what day, and are you going to leave a note? If so, let us help you write that note. And then I think they gave her 23 days. They said, in 23 days, you can kill yourself. And every day, Delaney goes onto this website to choose how she's going to do it, to kind of go read other people's blogs about why they are in the same place that she's in. And then you get flashbacks of how Delaney got to this place in her life where she doesn't want to be anymore. It was heartbreaking. But I could relate to Delaney. I saw the bullying that she went through. I went through something similar when I was younger. And I wanted it to end. Regardless of if that meant that I was ending too, or if it was just the bullying that was stopping. And even right now, like 10 months later, it still makes me cry. Like, this book stays with you. It shattered everything for me. But it was like, I've been that girl. I was Delaney in high school or middle school. Middle school was the worst for me. High school was better, but does anyone like high school? Do you see a pattern? So far, my favorites are tragic and devastating. I don't think they're all devastating. I don't know. I guess you'll have to stick around and see. Okay, number 13 for best books of 2020, or that I read in 2020, not that were published, was yet another sad read. This one did not shatter me in the same way that the first two did, or especially this one. But it broke me in a whole different way. So, A Dog's Purpose by W. Bruce Cameron. I read this in the same week that I had to put my YY down because he was really, really sick. And I stick by that decision today because I ended his suffering. But reading a book about a dog and his relationship with his owner in the same week that I had to say goodbye to my dog, that was the worst. But this was such a heartbreakingly great book. So you follow Bailey, who is this puppy right here. He's so cute. But you follow Bailey in all his different lives and how each time he died, he was like reborn, like reincarnated as a different dog to a different human, and his purpose was different every single life. And again, I had already seen the movie, so I knew that I was in for a rough time. But I had to read it, and I am so glad that I read this book. I think that the timing that I read it could not have been more perfect, because, yeah, it broke me while I was grieving over my puppy. But it also gave me hope that Wyatt got reborn into someone else's dog, and that he is making them the happiest person, because he was my grumpy old man and he made me happy. So I full-heartedly believe that Wyatt's out there somewhere. Maybe a different name. Definitely a different breed. He's no longer a Chihuahua. He's a big dog, finally. He gets to play with the big dogs. But it was a perfect book. Okay, this next one I don't own anymore, but number 12 on my list. I don't own it because it broke my heart so badly. I only like books that break my heart. That's what it seems like, huh? But I read The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. And it was about this girl who was going into high school. And I think it was the week before high school started, she gets violently raped by someone who is very close to her and her family. So the next morning, when she tries to tell her mom and her brother and her entire family, they kind of like, she doesn't come out and say, hey, he raped me. She just, she's like, I need to talk to you about him. And then they're kind of like, oh yeah, he's the best person ever. We love him. He's a part of our family. Blah, blah, blah. So if you were the victim of a violent assault, and when you went to tell your family, and all they're saying is how wonderful this guy is, wouldn't you rethink telling them? I would. So, instead, she keeps her mouth shut. She goes to high school and she spirals out of control. So there's every trigger warning in the world on this book. There's drugs, there's violent rape, there's not the best ways to make money. And through it all, there were parts that were so hopeful and so good that it was just like, oh my God, she's gonna get better. And then just when you thought everything was gonna be okay and she was gonna finally tell someone, she plummeted again. Until the end. Which I can't tell you because no spoilers. But it was so moving. It like psh. Then this one I recently read, but it made it on this list. So in the number 11 spot, actually I just realized I forgot a book on this list that's not on my paper. So the numbers are wrong, but I will fix it during editing. Anyways, the next one is 6 Months Later by Natalie D. Richards. I've heard so much about Natalie D. Richards' writing, about how she's a YA thriller author that I should try. And I am so sorry to you guys for not listening sooner. Because this was just perfect. recommending it, which I for sure ZZ am, that the first 100 pages or so are very confusing. You will not have a clue what's going on. But I think that's part of its charm. So 6 months later, you follow Chloe, who falls asleep in class. And when she wakes up, it's 6 months later, and her life is completely different. Her best friend doesn't talk to her. The guy she's been crushing on since forever is claiming that he's her boyfriend. And the bad boy, for some reason, she can't stay away from the bad boy. And I know what you're thinking. Ugh, bad boy trope. I hate that. So do I. But he's just very mysterious. And I don't think that he's really the bad boy you think he is. And I know that that's pitched in all the bad boy romances, but please give this one a shot, because it's not a romance. It's a mystery thriller with romance elements. You want to read it now? But you follow Chloe and on her day-to-day life as she tries to figure out what happened to her in the past 6 months and why everything is so different. So it's like this action-packed, high-stakes adventure that never ends, with a little romance in there. Then we have our first book that is not heartbreaking or shattering or anything at all. This is just like a really fluffy, happy book. I got you covered if you want, like, fluff. And great fluff. The Felon Boyfriend by Casey West. So, I've talked about this before, but Casey West has some of my favorite fluffy, happy romance, YA romance. But she also has some of my least favorite YA romances that I think are complete trash. But we don't need to go there right now. We're talking about the Felon Boyfriend. So this is the book that made me fall in love with the fake dating trope in books. And I don't know what to say. So this is about Gia, who gets dumped by her college-bound boyfriend named Bradley on the night of prom. And she's been telling all of her friends that she has a college boyfriend and nobody believes her, and you know the story. But what you don't know is that when she was getting dumped, there was this other mysterious, cute guy driving a pickup truck in the school parking lot. Why is he in the school parking lot? I have no idea. But you can if you read the book. But he sees the whole altercation between the two. And somehow he ends up inadvertently becoming the fill-in Bradley. And off we go with the fake dating trope. It sounds really good, doesn't it? You definitely want this, especially if you want just like pure joy in your life. Read this. It's just a really fun read. Just so good. Okay, Okay, now, I've talked about this author before, saying that he's not an author for me, but yet, one of the books I read by him this year is on my favorites list. That's why I can't completely quit Stephen King, because he has the potential to blow my mind and give me nightmares, like this book did. And that's Pet Sematary by Stephen King. So, I read this for the first time this year, and it was at a time when I was just like, I'm done with King. If I don't like this book, this is like the last chance redemption for Stephen King. And then he hit it out of the park. And it was so addictive and creepy and gave me nightmares, and that's exactly what I want from my horror. I don't own anymore because I gave it to my mom to read. I thought she would enjoy it too, and why not, share the love. So for this one, I'm picking The Wife Between Us by Geir Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This was their debut novel together, and they did perfect. So, you follow this woman who basically, I can't tell you anything about this book without giving spoilers. All I can tell you is that the ending is mind-blowing for this psychological thriller that you must read. The next one I don't own either. It is Those Girls by Chevy Stevens. Again, going into this book, you should know that there are trigger warnings for everything under the sun. So, abuse, rape, kidnapping, the whole 9 yards. So if that's something that you can't handle reading, do not pick this book up. But Those Girls follows these 3 sisters who get abused by their father. But one night, he takes it too far. And they go on the run until they hit a different town, and something far worse than abuse by their father happens to them. And then you just gotta read it to find out what happens. And it is terrifying. It was a terrifying read. But I loved every second of it. I've read all but one of this author's work. Even his new book. I've read that. I just haven't read The Last Lie, The Last Time I Lied. The Last Time I Lied. This was his debut novel. So this is Final Girls by Riley Sagar. This is so good. So it plays with the Final Girls trope, which I never knew I would love as much as I did this one. So you follow Quincy, who was the only survivor of this college massacre that happened when she was camping. And she knows 2 other final girls, Sam and Lisa are her 2 friends that she made after being final girl, because they're also final girls of their own massacre. And you follow Quincy as she finds out that Lisa was found dead. And everyone is saying that it was suicide. But Quincy doesn't believe that because she's fought so hard to get to a good place in life from where they all were years before that. So she starts investigating. And that's all you have to know. I did not think would be on this list because it's the only nonfiction that I'm putting on any list. Best of, worst of, anything. This is best of. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but this one stuck with me. So this is College Girl, a memoir by Laura Gray Rosendale. So this is her story of being in college at her house, or her house, her dorm. I think it was her house on the college campus. When someone breaks into her apartment, or breaks in and rapes her. And it was written in such a way, I was there, sharing in her pain, in her suffering, understanding exactly what was happening. And I was so terrified, so paranoid while reading this book that I had to put it down. When I did come back to it this month and finish it, I'm so glad that I finished this book, but at the same time, I walk home a lot from work, and sometimes it's dark out. So I also live on or near a college campus because I'm in college. But I was looking backwards while walking home. I'd be like this, and I was terrified. So I think it did a great job of showing that aspect of it. And then the parts that I found more boring, for lack of a better word, were the parts of her trauma. Like, I don't think it was boring at all, but it was less action-packed, more character-driven, which I don't tend to read. But you follow Laura during the attack and after, as you see her healing process. And I'm not gonna lie to you and say that it was like overnight success, because it wasn't. It took a long time, and reading about it was just like, I saw myself wishing that I could heal her. And the next one on my list is yet another heartbreaker. So this is one of the first arcs I've ever gotten. So this came out this year. This is The Shape of Family by Shippy Simonia Goda. And I'm pretty sure that I butcher her name every single time. But here, I'll show you. about the shape of family, where you follow two kids, Prim and Karina, and you follow their parents, who I really can't, Jaya and Keith, who go through this life-changing tragedy that just devastates you. Honestly, with lack of a better word, it devastates you. It shattered my soul, mostly because I saw myself in Karina growing up. I was that big sister who always tried to look out for my baby brother. And I was that big sister who got annoyed at my baby brother because he wanted something, or because he was annoying. But following them through this tragedy and seeing everyone's point of view tore my soul out. Not that that's possible, but it was so emotional. And when I won this arc, I thought that the cover was kind of boring, and I couldn't remember, even though I had read the back a couple times, I still couldn't fully grasp what the heck this book is about. So I was not interested at all. I'm just like, okay, well, it's an arc, I'm gonna try it. And through this entire year, this has still been at the top of my list. This is one of my favorites of the year. A new all-time favorite. Although not really new, because I read it in like January. But new as of this year. And if you want to be heartbroken and you want a book that is going to make you cry your eyes out, this is the winner right here. Okay, changing gears a little bit, or a lot. Instead of devastating and heartbreaking, we're gonna go with action-packed and terrifying. So this is No Exit by Taylor Adams. In this book, you follow Darby, who is snowed in at this rest stop in Colorado, I believe, when she's on her way from Utah to go see her dying mother. And it's around Christmas time, so there's snow, and anyway, so she gets snowed in, and she sees that there are a lot of cars, or like 5 different cars in the parking lot. So she knows when she goes inside the rest area that people are already there. So when she gets there, she notices in the car next to hers, there's a cage. And inside that cage is a little girl. So she goes from snowed in and annoyed to confused and scared. Like, what is going on? Why is there a kid in a cage? So she puts it on herself to try and rescue this kid. So when she goes inside the rest area, she starts asking people about whose car is whose and trying to figure out who owns the car that the kid is in the cage entrapped in. And then it's a high-stakes, action-packed adventure trying to rescue this kid from someone. It's got dark twists around every corner, and I did not see them coming. I might have to reread it, but it was so good. So it says 13 hours, 4 strangers, 1 missing child, no exit. She knows her odds. She'll fight anyway. Then, this one was not on my TBR this month, but I read it anyway, and I'm so glad that I did, because it made it to my top 3. This is where it ends, by this author that I cannot pronounce, so I'll show you. It's about a school shooting that follows Ty as he shoots his class. And you follow 4 different perspectives of that day and of the stuff leading up to it. So this was, I said it in my vlog and I'm going to say it again, this was just heartbreakingly beautiful. It was just perfection. It really makes you think. It makes you feel for the bad guy or the shooter or whatever the case may be. It makes you feel for them, and actually, in an odd way, it makes you root for them. And I know that sounds crazy because he shot people, but you don't understand because you don't know the full story. Every story has 2 sides or more. And through this novel, you see the full story. And then you have to determine for yourself, was it worth it? Like, I mean, obviously he didn't do the right thing. Shootings are never the right move. But can you understand from his perspective, from what was going on, why he did it? And if you can, then that makes a great novel. Because you would think, oh, it's about a school shooting, you hate the shooter. I mean, of course, that's what you think initially going into the story. You're like, oh yeah, this is going to be some really unlikable person or people. But that's not the case. The fact was that he was lovable. He was a human. And I think people forget that sometimes. And I think that it just made me feel so much empathy for this kid. Because first and foremost, he's just a kid. And then secondly, he has been dealt a really bad hand in more recent times. And it was just great. I saw this book on Kayla from Books and Lala's channel, and the way she talked about it just made me have to read it. So the number 2 book Sarah Thomas. So this is so far up on my list because of the ending alone. So you follow Casey, who Casey, who's the new girl at her school. And she's surprised when everyone's really nice to her from the beginning. Until one night when her friends go out without her. But then her friend Bailey never makes it home, so she never gets to ask her why they didn't invite her or any of those, questions that she has. But what happened to Bailey? You don't just disappear, do you? So you follow the mystery of what happened to Bailey that night. What really happened to her. And who is responsible for her being gone. And I can't tell you anything else, so it's very, very vague. But the ending of Little Monsters, I did not see that ending coming. And then I told Amanda about this book, and she finally read it. And she didn't see the ending coming either, so it's not just, I got the clues, you just didn't see them type of thing. It's just, it came so far out of left field that, what? That's all I have to say. It was shocking. Hey, and then my number one book of 2020 is a complete shock to me as well. I actually just bought this book 3 days ago. Babe, did we go book shopping 2 or 3 days ago?
2, I think.
2. Okay, so I just bought this book 2 days ago. I've already read it and loved it, and it's number 1. So it's definitely a surprise. I read American Royals by Catherine McGee. This book is everything. So it has a little bit of heartache. A lot of heartache, okay? I cried like 4 times reading this novel. I laughed while reading this novel, which doesn't happen much. I was smiling because I was reading this novel. And I stayed up almost all night to finish this book because I couldn't put it down. Because it's so addictive. So, this story, you follow 4 different perspectives. But it's about, what if George Washington wasn't our president? What if George Washington was King George Washington of America? So generations later, George Washington's family is still ruling America because, king. So you follow Beatrice, who is going to be the first woman, the first queen who didn't marry into the family. But they just made this new law that the firstborn child is going to take over as king or queen when they're of age or when their father and mother or whatever, when they die. So Princess Beatrice is the oldest. So she gets the honor, the privilege of being queen. So she has to take all these lessons of etiquette and, like, just being the best queen, right? She has to prepare for it. And then you follow Princess Samantha, who is the younger daughter, who kind of thinks that nobody even cares about her. Like, she's the throwaway daughter because she's not queen. Or she doesn't need to take any of the same lessons that her sister does. So that causes a rift between Beatrice and Samantha. And then you follow Daphne, who is Prince Jefferson's girlfriend, on-off again girlfriend, okay? And then you follow Nina, who is Princess Sam's best friend, and also Prince Jefferson's love interest? So maybe a love triangle type thing? So you get family drama, relationship galore. Princess Beatrice might want, like, she has to make the decision to either think with her crown as the leader of America and do something that the king wants her to do, or think with her heart and go after her own dreams, even if it's not what the king thinks is right for the country or what the media is gonna prefer. Like, as future queen, does she go after what she wants, or does she do what's better for the country? I guess you have to read it to find out. But it had everything. The only thing that I can say that I did not like about this book was that it ended on a cliffhanger, and now I need the second book called Majesty. This is the best book I've read this year. You need to pick it up. If you don't read any of the others, then that's a shame, because those are such good books and I enjoyed them and they're all 5 stars. But this book should be a must read. That is my favorite books of 2020. I think there were 16. I'm going to have a count going for you so you can kind of keep track with me, or better than me probably. But don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you've read any of these books, please leave it in the comments below and we can talk about them. I'll catch you guys later.